Tama used to be a valiant knight who met his end at the hands of the demons. However, after his death, he was reborn into the body of an S-rank behemoth, a creature so powerful it could obliterate entire nations in an instant, or at least that's what his status screen claims. In reality, he merely appears as a cat. While Tama is grateful for this second chance at life, he feels a bit torn about his new form as a monster, especially considering his previous life was entirely dedicated to slaying monsters. At that moment, he spots an E-rank slime slowly approaching him, and it's clear that the creature intends to eat him. Reacting quickly, he revisits the status screen to select a skill for self-defense. He unlocks an ability that allows him to fire rocks from his mouth and uses it to defeat the slime. Once the threat is eliminated, he realizes he hasn't eaten anything since his reincarnation, so he decides to give the slime a try. To his surprise, it tastes surprisingly good, and as an extra benefit, he discovers he can absorb the skills of monsters he consumes. This leads to him unlocking the ability to store items. After that, Tama decides to go through the rest of the dungeon to see what else he can eat. Since he's an S-rank, none of the other monsters really stand a chance against him. Tama proceeds to slay all kinds of minotaurs, golems, and snakes to feed on them. And so far, his life as a cat hasn't been so bad. He could get used to living like this. At the same time, a very well-endowed elf girl has just arrived at the dungeon entrance to begin her day of adventuring. Back with Tama, he's still busy exploring his new home when he comes across a treasure chest in the middle of the room. He's really excited since this is the first time he has ever seen a treasure chest in person, so he rushes to open it and finds a massive gem inside. Unfortunately, the treasure chest turned out to be a trap, but instead of being a mimic, it teleports him into a hidden boss room. Tama finds himself riding on the back of an earth dragon, and unlike the other monsters he's faced so far, this one is also S-rank like him, meaning he won't be able to take it down in a single blow like the others. The earth dragon taunts Tama for daring to enter her lair, declaring that she's going to kill him. However, Tama has only been alive for an hour, and he's not about to let himself be taken out so easily. He tries using his rock attack, but because the earth dragon is, well, made of earth, the attack harmlessly bounces off her back and strikes the roof, leaving a small hole. The dragon retaliates with a slash, but Tama counters it by activating his iron body skill to shield himself. Although Tama manages to withstand the slash, the attack leaves him seriously injured. The dragon, impressed that he's still alive after enduring one of her strikes, acknowledges his resilience, but notes that he remains too weak to defeat her. She charges forward, intending to finish him off. At the last moment, however, Tama activates a flight skill and uses his tail to slash out the dragon's eye before escaping through the hole in the ceiling. Tama is losing a lot of blood from his injuries, so he's trying to get out of the dungeon to find a safe place to rest before he ends up passing out. He's right next to the exit, but he eventually succumbs to the blood loss and collapses to the ground. Just then, he notices something approaching from around the corner, and since he can't move anymore, whatever that thing is will definitely be able to kill him once he is spotted. Luckily for him, it was the elf girl who came around the corner. As soon as she saw the near lifeless body of a cat, she rushed over to help him. Tama wakes up a few hours later to find himself lying in bed with his wounds carefully bandaged. Feeling disoriented, he wonders where he might be, but his confusion is interrupted when an elf girl enters the room holding a bowl of milk for him. He recalls catching a glimpse of her just before passing out and can't help but marvel at her beauty. The elf girl is visibly relieved to see Tama awake, noting that his injuries were quite severe. She admits she has no idea how a little kitten like him could have ended up in the middle of a dungeon. Tama quickly realizes that she believes he's just an ordinary cat rather than the powerful behemoth he truly is. Since he can't speak, there's no way to explain the truth. But even if he could, why would he ruin the arrangement when it means getting to sleep on her chest every night? Over the next few weeks, the elf girl continues to take care of Tama until he has fully recovered from his wounds. One day, Arya heads out as usual, and while she's gone, Tama thinks about how grateful he is for what she has done for him. She not only nursed him back to health, but she also gave him food to eat and let him sleep in her bed. In order to pay her back for her kindness, Tama swears that no matter what happens, he's going to make sure he protects that girl with his life. To ensure her safety, Tama decides to follow Aria into the dungeon so he can keep an eye on her. He sneaks onto the boat before it leaves. Once they get to the dungeon, he begins quietly following Aria while staying hidden. He's a bit worried that she might get herself into some kind of weird situation, like losing her clothes to a slime or something, so he prepares himself to jump in at the first sign of trouble. As Aria encounters a group of goblins, she swiftly activates her acceleration skill, cutting them down with ease. Once the fight is over, she kneels to collect their ears, intending to claim the reward later. Watching her in action, Tama is thoroughly impressed. With his past experience as a knight, he knows a great deal about swordsmanship and can easily recognize just how incredible Aria's speed and technique are. As Aria finishes stowing the goblin ears, she spots another goblin peering at her from behind a corner. Instinctively, she assumes her battle stance. She's already killed enough goblins to meet her quota for the day, but if this one insists on attacking, she's ready to take it down too. What she doesn't realize, however, is that this goblin isn't ordinary, it's a goblin mage. Without warning, it hurls a massive fireball in her direction. Caught off guard and unprepared to handle such an attack, Aria finds herself in serious trouble. Tama doesn't want to let her get hurt, but he can't use any of his overpowered skills without revealing that he's a monster. Instead, he pushes Aria out of the way and slashes the goblin mage with his regular kitty paws, causing it to stumble backward and fall down the dungeon stairs to its doom. Aria doesn't understand why or how Tama managed to get here, but she's grateful that he saved her. On the ride back to town, she lets him lay on her triple Ds while she tickles his belly, and Tama is absolutely loving it. After returning to town, Aria heads straight to the Adventurers Guild to submit the goblin ears she collected. As she approaches the reception desk, she is intercepted by Lord Casman. Though she has encountered him before, she had been trying to steer clear of him because of his persistent attempts to recruit her into his party. Aria tries to politely decline his offer, fully aware of Casman's sleazy nature, but he refuses to accept her rejection. As if to push his luck, he reaches out to grab both of her cheeks. Before his hands can make contact, Tama springs into action, biting down hard on Casman's hand and refusing to let go. Casman yells in pain, flailing wildly in an attempt to shake Tama loose. When he finally manages to dislodge the furious kitten, Tama lands directly on Casman's face and unleashes a flurry of scratches before leaping back onto Aria's chest, leaving Casman thoroughly humiliated. Casman is enraged and is about to draw his sword to attack Tama, but before he could take a swing, his sword is grabbed by the guild master, Arnold. Arnold reminds Casman that the guild has rules against brandishing weapons, especially when it's for a reason as pathetic as beefing with a cat. So there are going to be major consequences for him if he continues. Casman doesn't want to mess with Arnold, so he immediately runs out the door. Aria begins thanking Arnold for helping her out. He tells her it's no big deal and compliments Tama for sticking up for Aria when he bit Casman's hand. Aria then heads to the reception desk, and Arnold documents all monster parts to officially complete Aria's quest. Afterwards, Aria takes a seat at one of the tables, so she can spend some quality time with Tama. Up to this point, everything has been fairly wholesome, but Aria is starting to exhibit some odd behavior. While she's tickling Tama's stomach, her finger begins to stray dangerously close to his balls, and she seems a bit too thrilled about the idea of tickling her cat's private area. Shortly after, Aria prepares to take a bath and decides to bring Tama along with her. However, Tama, being a former knight with his honor to uphold, refuses to engage in something as improper as joining her in the women's bath. Despite his protests, Tama ultimately finds himself in the bath with Aria. While they're there, Aria starts talking about her aspiration to become stronger. She shares how, years ago, demons nearly wiped out her village, but the sword Saint Alicia arrived just in time, defeating the demons and saving everyone. Since then, Aria has been determined to grow strong like Alicia. The next day, Aria is heading to the guild with Tama again, and Tama can tell that she's well liked by everyone in town since they are all so nice to her. She makes it to the guild and greets Arnold at the reception reception desk, but Arnold tells her that today isn't a good day to be here, so she should get out of here quickly. Unfortunately, before Aria could follow Arnold's advice, Casman shows up and proudly announces that after he got injured by her cat, he went and tattled to the Baron. As a result, he was given a special order saying that Aria's pet cat is to be put down. Aria is in utter disbelief at what she's hearing. Although she hasn't had Tama for very long, he's incredibly precious to her, and the thought of him being killed is unbearable. She drops to her knees, pleading with Casman to show mercy. Sensing her desperation, Casman decides to exploit the situation to his advantage. He suggests they have a duel. If Aria wins, Tama's life will be spared, but if Casman wins, she must agree to become his wife. The deal is blatantly unfair, especially since Casman holds a higher rank than Aria. But with Tama's life on the line, Aria has no choice but to accept the terms. The duel begins, and Casman kicks her in the side. After she stumbles, he compliments Aria on her speed, but says that it won't be enough for her to beat him. Aria tries to switch tactics and throws several daggers at him, but Casman has a knife-proof cape, so he is easily able to block. He then charges at Aria and begins putting pressure on her by repeatedly striking with his sword until he eventually disarms her. Now, all hope is pretty much lost for Aria since she can no longer defend herself. Tama is feeling deeply torn at this moment. If he doesn't do anything, Aria will be forced into marrying Casman. However, if he uses any of his abilities, the onlookers will realize he's actually a monster. As Casman moves in to deliver the final strike and make Aria surrender, Tama decides he can't stand by any longer. He leaps in to protect Aria, activating his iron body skill to shatter Casman's blade. Immediately after, Tama unleashes a powerful howl skill, sending Casman hurtling into a cluster of nearby trees. By sheer coincidence, Casman's sword is flung in the same direction aimed directly at his balls, ensuring he's about to have an extremely unpleasant experience. After what just happened, everyone in the crowd begins murmuring amongst themselves because they know they just saw the cat use skills. Tama knew this would happen, and now that everyone has seen him use skills, it won't be long before they figure out that he's a monster. He knows he'll definitely be killed, but even so, he's satisfied with this outcome because he at least managed to defend Aria. Aria and Arnold approach Tama, and after witnessing him use his skills, they begin discussing what he might actually be, rather than concluding that Tama is a monster. They are convinced that he must be an elemental cat. Arnold announces Aria as the winner, and everything returns to normal, allowing Tama to carry on his life as an overpowered cat with the coziest bed imaginable. The next morning, Aria tries to coax Tama out of bed by cuddling him, but the mischievous kitten playfully nibbles on her ear, leaving her completely flustered and blushing uncontrollably. Remembering his past life as an honorable knight, Tama quickly decides to stop before the situation becomes even more awkward. He leaps off the bed to walk away, but Aria keeps calling after him, her tone full of longing, which only makes things even more uncomfortable for Tama. Later, Aria brings Tama to the blacksmith shop to visit her friend Vulcan. As soon as they arrive, Vulcan's attention is immediately captured by Tama, her eyes fixed on the adorable kitten. While Aria shares stories about Tama, Vulcan eagerly asks if she can hold him. Tama seems delighted as Vulcan picks him up, marveling at his cuteness. However, Aria quickly redirects the conversation to the purpose of their visit. She needs Vulcan to craft armor for Tama. Vulcan is thrilled by the idea, excited to take on such a unique and charming project. She immediately starts taking Tama's measurements, assuring Aria that she'll create the perfect armor for him. As Vulcan gets busy with her work, Aria leans down to whisper to Tama, asking if he's ready for an adventure. Without hesitation, Tama eagerly agrees. While Aria and Tama make their plans, Vulcan is laser-focused on crafting the armor, treating the task like it's her life's mission. In just under 10 minutes, Vulcan proudly presents the completed armor, and it turns out to be a masterpiece. Tama looks dashing in it, and the fit is perfect. However, Vulcan admits she's still struggling with another issue: Aria's sword. Despite reforging it over 100 times, she hasn't been able to make it any lighter, which makes it difficult for Aria to wield effectively during her quests. After some thought, Vulcan suggests forming a temporary party. This way, she can observe Aria in action, watching how she swings the sword to better understand the problem and find a solution. That day, the team dives into the dungeon, where Vulcan quickly demonstrates her strength, smashing through the hideous goblins they encounter. Aria watches in awe, completely captivated by Vulcan's boldness and incredible power. While Tama admires her as both fearless and highly skilled, Vulcan's expertise is further demonstrated when she deflects a fireball attack from one of the monsters using a special ability linked to her smithing talents. She explains that her power allows her to imbue her armor with various elemental attributes, making her highly adaptable in battle. With the path now clear, Vulcan steps aside and urges Aria to take the lead with her sword. Their next challenge is an unsightly, oversized orc. The creature's grotesque appearance is both repulsive and intimidating, but Aria charges in regardless. Activating her acceleration skill, she attempts to land a strike, but the orc proves to be surprisingly agile, expertly blocking her attacks. Tama then steps in, soaring through the air and activating his iron body technique to shield Aria from an incoming blow. Distracting the orc just long enough, seizing the moment, Aria strikes and eliminates the beast in a single decisive attack. Vulcan observes Aria's movements closely and notices her long sword hinders her flow in battle, making her strikes less effective. Unhappy with her performance, Aria turns to Vulcan and requests an even tougher challenge. Eager to push her boundaries and become stronger, impressed by her determination, Vulcan encourages her to proceed to the next floor, promising even more formidable trials ahead. As they descend further, the group finds themselves facing a swarm of slimy, lecherous ropers rather than the usual massive beasts. Tama immediately grows nervous, worried that these slimy creatures will ensnare his mistress with their writhing tendrils. He quickly warns Aria to stay alert and avoid their sticky grips at all costs. Aria charges in with acceleration, but the ropers' speed makes them tough opponents. Her strikes fail to connect with their bodies, and one of the ropers shatters her heavy sword, leaving her defenseless. Just as she's about to be snared, Vulcan hurls a knife toward her. Aria catches it midair and swiftly drives it into the roper's core, killing it in one precise motion. With newfound resolve, Aria shifts her focus and moves to take down the next slime. As Vulcan watches her fighting style closely, she quickly realizes that Aria's true strength lies in using shorter, lighter weapons rather than her heavy longsword. In a matter of moments, Aria slices through the monster's limbs with incredible speed and precision, leaving Vulcan utterly speechless. Though she always knew Aria was talented, Vulcan hadn't anticipated this level of swiftness and effectiveness in dispatching the second monster. Just as they begin to think the fight is over, the slime splashes its goo all over Aria, completely drenching her from head to toe while regrowing its limbs. Cringing in disgust and fury, Aria growls that only Tama is allowed to do something like that to her. Fueled by her outrage, she obliterates the creature in a single devastating move. This time, she cuts it into so many pieces that there's no chance of it regenerating. Vulcan and Tama rush to congratulate her on her incredible display of skill. While Vulcan moves closer to offer praise, Tama, being the cheeky little kitten he is, stops halfway to steal a bit of juice from the dead monster to absorb its skill for his own use. Still fuming, Aria unleashes her frustration on the remnants of the roper that dared to drench her in its disgusting goo. She furiously stabs its already destroyed body over and over, muttering vengeful thoughts under her breath, while Tama watches in silent bewilderment, wondering if she might be taking things a bit too far. After her rampage, Aria opens up to Vulcan and shares the story behind her choice to wield longswords. She recounts meeting the Sword Saint during her childhood, a figure who became her idol and inspired her to take up the weapon. Even though the longsword doesn't naturally suit her fighting style, Aria devoted years to mastering it in an effort to follow in her hero's footsteps. However, with her recent realization that daggers complement her skills far better, she has decided to embrace this newfound strength. Tama listens attentively and offers his support, reassuring her that this change will only make her stronger. Recognizing Aria's growth, Vulcan suggests venturing to a deeper floor of the dungeon, trusting in Aria's ability to handle the challenges with her daggers. Before pressing on, they decide to rest near a Philosopher's Stone, a rare artifact that keeps monsters at bay within its vicinity. As they take a break, Aria finds herself staring at the stone, which unexpectedly triggers a flood of painful memories from her childhood when her home was attacked by demons. Lost in thought, Aria barely notices Vulcan's concerned look. When Vulcan gently asks if something is wrong, Aria brushes it off, quickly changing the subject and steering the conversation elsewhere. While the group takes a break, Tama splashes around in a pool of water, carefree and enjoying himself. Seeing him having so much fun, Aria decides to join in, removing her plot armor and giving Tama a clear view of what's beneath. Vulcan soon joins, and the three take a refreshing dip together. However, as Tama swims, he tries hard to focus on anything but their exposed skin. During their break, Aria casually asks Vulcan about her usual dungeon party, unknowingly bringing up a sensitive topic. Vulcan explains that her party disbanded after 2 members fell in love, and the female adventurer became pregnant. The couple decided to leave their adventuring life behind and settle down. The conversation then takes an unexpected turn when Vulcan mentions that elemental cats like Tama are capable of crossbreeding, speculating about what might happen if Tama grows larger and enters a serious heat season. As their break ends, the group heads to the next dungeon floor, where they encounter a fierce minotaur. Unlike the goblins and ropers from earlier, this creature is a formidable opponent. Aria approaches carefully, accelerating toward the beast and executing her whirlwind-slash technique. However, her attack barely scratches the minotaur's thick hide, leaving her shaken. Vulcan steps in, offering encouragement and helping Aria regain her composure. Motivated by Vulcan's encouragement, Aria regains her focus and unleashes a series of faster, more aggressive attacks. Overwhelmed by her speed, the Minotaur begins swinging its massive weapon recklessly. One of its wild swings hits the ceiling, causing chunks of debris to fall dangerously close to Vulcan. Acting swiftly, Tama uses his howling skill to deflect the falling rubble, saving Vulcan just in time. Inspired by Tama's quick thinking and courage, Aria spots an opening and delivers a devastating strike straight to the Minotaur's chest, taking the beast down once and for all. As Tama cheers for Aria's hard-earned victory, Vulcan stands in awe, marveling at the little cat's strength and courage. Her thoughts wander as she can't help but think that Tama is a really powerful alpha male. Back at the Adventurers Guild, Aria, Vulcan, and Tama turn in the loot they gathered during their dungeon raid. They then approach Arnold, who inspects the deep cut marks on the Minotaur remains and asks who was responsible for dealing such impressive damage. With a proud smile, Vulcan explains that the marks were the result of Aria's newly refined skills. Arnold, remembering how much weaker Aria had been when she first arrived in town, praises her for her remarkable growth and dedication. Blushing at the compliment, Aria thanks Arnold, feeling a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. With their earnings in hand, the trio heads to a local restaurant to celebrate their successful adventure. At the restaurant, Vulcan wastes no time indulging in heavy refills, impressing Tama, who can't help but wonder if she's a seasoned drinker. Aria takes the opportunity to express her gratitude to Vulcan for her support during the raid, admitting how much fun she had working together. Vulcan shares the same sentiments, showing off a rare medicinal herb she collected in the dungeon as a memento. Their lively conversation stirs a sense of nostalgia in Tama, reminding him of his past life as an adventurer, when he had comrades to share such moments with. Even so, Tama admits to himself that his current life isn't bad at all. Being the spoiled pet of a stunning elf is a dream few would decline. As their bond deepens, Vulcan proposes that they form an official party. Caught off guard, Aria is flattered but too shy to respond. Noticing her hesitation, Tama playfully nibbles her hand and places it on top of Vulcan's, sealing the agreement on her behalf. The group bursts into cheers, celebrating the beginning of their new partnership. Fueled by their growing partnership, they decide to order more drinks and turn the evening into an unforgettable celebration. Later that night, Tama finds himself squished between Aria and Vulcan's metaphorical plot armor. The snug and awkward situation makes it nearly impossible for him to sleep, especially when he hears Aria muttering in her sleep about hoping Tama doesn't get too rough. Feeling both suspicious and mildly flustered, he somehow manages to keep his composure. In need of a distraction, Tama checks his stats and is startled to discover he's eligible for evolution. However, evolving might turn him into a massive behemoth, potentially putting an end to the life he currently shares with Aria and Vulcan. Prioritizing loyalty and companionship over raw power, Tama resolves to stay as their beloved and dependable pet. The next morning, while strolling through town, Arya and Tama come across two thugs harassing a young girl, accusing her of being a pickpocket. Arya wastes no time stepping in, and as soon as the thugs catch sight of her elemental cat, they flee to avoid any trouble. Arya consoles the girl, discovering that she's an orphan, and takes her to a local church where nuns care for other children. Listening to Arya's heartfelt discussion with the nuns, Tama feels a deep sense of admiration for his master's kindness, and silently vows to support her even more than ever. That evening, Arnold summons Arya to the Adventurers Guild to congratulate her on her promotion to C rank. As a token of recognition for her hard work, he presents her with a gleaming new rank pendant. However, their celebration is cut short by a commotion near the quest board. Arnold explains that people have been disappearing in Leonard, a nearby town, and rumors suggest that demons may be involved. Upon hearing this, Arya's determination sharpens. Fueled by her deep-seated grudge against demons, she eagerly asks for more details and declares her intention to take on the emergency quest without a moment's hesitation. After hearing the details of the case, Arya pressed Arnold relentlessly for every piece of information she had. Vulcan felt uneasy watching the elf's eagerness to take charge, doubting whether she was truly up to the task. However, Arya's resolve remained firm. She was determined to act swiftly to prevent more people from becoming victims. Impressed by her determination, Vulcan offered his assistance, and Arnold remarked that it wouldn't be surprising if a mercenary company soon decided to recruit the two of them. Just then, a young man wearing a tunic entered the guild. Introducing himself as Cedric, he was immediately recognized by the adventurers as the Duke's eldest son, renowned for his expertise in managing labyrinths. Cedric greeted Vulcan warmly and assured both her and Arya that they would soon stand together in battle. Tama then recalled Cedric from the legendary war known as Ragnarok, where humanity waged a desperate fight against demons. Although the losses were catastrophic, victory was ultimately secured thanks to a prodigious boy, the Grand Mage who led them to triumph and became a legendary hero. Amid the excitement, Arya expressed concern that their group was too small to face such overwhelming threats. Arnold, clearly charmed by Cedric, reassured her, insisting that Cedric's abilities were enough to astonish anyone. As Arya affectionately clung to him, Arnold reminded her that such gestures should be kept private. Curious, Arya asked if they were a couple, and Vulcan confirmed it, leaving Tama completely baffled. Remaining silent until they returned home, Tama couldn't help but notice his master's unease. It was understandable, given the dangers of traveling with someone as legendary as the hero. The cat Tama licked the elf's face, seemingly trying to comfort her, and she responded with a kiss. Surprised by the affectionate exchange, Tama quickly refocused as the group prepared to set out on their journey. Along the way, they met new allies, the silver-haired swordsman Danny, the humanoid monster Howard, the fiery red-headed Kenny, and the cheerful Marietta. Arya introduced Tama, who immediately charmed everyone with his undeniable cuteness. Marietta even insisted on taking turns carrying him. Their peaceful journey was suddenly interrupted when a group of orcs blocked the road. Cedric calmly instructed Danny to deal with the threat, and the swordsman dispatched the orcs effortlessly, without breaking a sweat. Vulcan, intrigued by Danny's abilities, inquired about his fighting style, and Kenny confirmed that Danny hadn't even used any skills. Arya began to understand just how powerful the heroes of Ragnarok were, while Tama was in awe of Danny's raw strength, eager to one day fight alongside him. As night fell, they arrived at Leonard Village, where the grateful villagers warmly welcomed Cedric and his team. One villager shared troubling news. Many locals had mysteriously disappeared, including a search party lost in the ruins and another girl who had been abducted the previous night. The revelation stirred painful memories for Arya, reminding her of the invasion that had devastated her homeland. The village leader then explained that Cedric's knights were the villagers' last hope. Noticing the group's exhaustion from their travels, the villagers quickly prepared a hearty meal to help them recover. Later, as they settled into their lodging, Arya's curiosity got the better of her, and she asked why each of her companions had chosen to become knights. Danny revealed that his family's poverty had forced him to join in order to repay their debts, while Howard shared a similar story of hardship. Kenny explained that she needed money to buy medicine for her ailing sister, and Marietta said she sought freedom for her father, who had been enslaved. Listening to these heartfelt stories, Tama couldn't help but sense the sorrow hidden behind their motivations. Even Arya began to regret asking the question, feeling the weight of their struggles. The knight, however, felt no shame in their choices. They had faced their struggles, paid their dues, and were now forging their own paths. Cedric's reason for joining, though, was entirely different. He admitted he had no interest in love or family obligations. As the Duke's son, he joined the order not out of duty, but because he lacked a greater purpose and found enjoyment in slaying monsters. While his blunt honesty didn't sit well with everyone, no one voiced any objections. After dinner, it was time for everyone to bathe. While the girls enjoyed a relaxing soak, the boys, driven by youthful mischief, attempted to sneak a peek. Tama, ever watchful, caught them in the act. With a booming shout, he sent Danny and Howard scrambling back to their quarters. Thoroughly embarrassed, Cedric observed their hurried retreat with mild amusement, quietly pondering their excitement for the journey, a feeling he couldn't entirely share. Once the group was refreshed, they pressed on, venturing deeper into the foreboding labyrinth. Unbeknownst to them, a malevolent creature was silently stalking their every move. To this hidden predator, the adventurers were nothing more than prey, watched closely as it gathered its strength and prepared to execute its deadly plans. Before long, their progress was halted by a pack of werewolves blocking their path. Howard, acting as the tank, stepped forward with his massive shield, taunting the wolves to draw their attention and create an opening for his companions to strike. Cedric demonstrated his unparalleled swordsmanship with flawless precision, while Arya dove into the battle, determined to prove herself. Tama, noticing the armored werewolves, briefly considered unleashing a powerful roar, but instead chose a water-based attack. With perfect aim, he struck one werewolf down and swiftly eliminated two more, leaving his party in awe of his skill. Meanwhile, the hidden monster, observing from the shadows, was taken aback by how quickly his wolves had been defeated, especially by Tama, whose command of elemental power was unexpected. Despite their impressive strength, the monster knew he couldn't allow these intruders to advance further. Resolving to escalate the situation, he prepared to intervene, whether by unleashing more weapons or stepping in himself. Back with the heroes, everyone was shocked by the elemental cat's abilities. Arya, utterly captivated, openly expressed her admiration, even suggesting she wouldn't mind being subdued by Tama's strength. He found her words peculiar, but Tama resisted his animal instincts, reminding himself that Arya was still his master. They soon arrived at a chamber filled with an oppressive, crushing atmosphere, so Cedric raised his hand, halting the group. Then, from the shadows, emerged Beryl Astaroth, the labyrinth's master. He declared that their journey would end here, revealing himself as a surviving demon seeking vengeance for his fallen king. Danny immediately accused Beryl of targeting Leonard Village out of revenge, but the demon dismissed the claim with a sinister grin, explaining that the town was merely the beginning of a much larger scheme. Without hesitation, he summoned a group of trolls to attack. Realizing the threat, Cedric quickly ordered the team to split up. But Beryl had anticipated this move and conjured a barrier that isolated Tama from the rest of the group. As a troll charged at Tama, he fought back fiercely, managing to tear off its arm, to his frustration. However, the severed limb regenerated almost instantly. Meanwhile, Cedric's team found themselves surrounded by enemies, leaving them with no choice but to place their hopes in Cedric's leadership to guide them to safety. Cedric unsheathed his blade, which began to pulse with dark magic, and with a wicked laugh, he charged at two trolls, slicing them apart so thoroughly they couldn't regenerate, removing them from the battlefield entirely. Beryl's eyes widened as he recognized the forbidden magic Cedric wielded, an ability used only by the Great Mage during the Ragnarok War. Cedric smirked with amusement because this was going to be so fun for him. Meanwhile, Tama attempted a stone war attack, but the trolls barely flinched, and their wounds healed instantly. Realizing the danger, Tama retreated, his mind racing as he considered whether to evolve into his stronger form. However, evolving would mean breaking his bond with Arya, a sacrifice Tama refused to make. Resolute in his choice to stay by her side, he unleashed Flame Roar, scorching the trolls and preventing their wounds from regenerating. His daring tactics succeeded, and the trolls collapsed in defeat. Enraged by the relentless attack, Beryl prepared for the next confrontation. Vulcan charged forward with his massive hammer, swinging it powerfully, but Beryl skillfully dodged and deflected Aria's knife strike with his dagger. Smirking, Beryl mocked the hammer's slow and predictable movements. However, he was caught off guard when Vulcan suddenly kicked up a cloud of dust, temporarily blinding him. Seizing the opportunity, Aria darted forward and drove her blade into Beryl's chest. At first, he dismissed the wound as trivial, but then light radiated from the elf's enchanted dagger, amplifying the damage and forcing him to his knees. Snarling in pain, Beryl struck back with his dagger, delivering a vicious wound to Aria far more than a simple cut. The group rushed to her side, panic setting in as Tama feared the weapon might be poisoned. Meanwhile, Beryl, still alive, smirked darkly and declared that humanity would crumble when true power returned. Then, with those ominous words, his body began to petrify, turning to stone before crumbling into dust. Meanwhile, the poison rapidly spread through Aria's arm. Cedric examined the wound with a grim expression, identifying it as dragon venom, a lethal toxin. Howard pressed her arm against his enchanted shield, hoping to slow the poison's progress, while the group hurried back to Leonard Village. Upon their arrival, the village doctor confirmed their fears. Dragon venom was invariably fatal within a day and a half, and survival was impossible without the eye of an earth dragon. Desperate to save Aria, the group debated the idea of hunting the beast, but Cedric adamantly objected, insisting there wasn't enough time. As Aria's pain grew unbearable, Tama, consumed by guilt and despair, leapt out the window and took off. Memories of Aria saving his life overwhelmed Tama, and he made a solemn vow to repay her kindness, no matter the cost. Determined, he raced to the ruins where he had been reborn as an elemental cat, ready to confront the Earth Dragon, the same beast he had fought before and barely escaped. The dragon, surprised to see Tama return, sneered and taunted him for fleeing during their last encounter. But this time, Tama didn't falter. Deep down, he understood that his current strength wasn't enough to win. With no other options, Tama made a life-altering choice. He decided to evolve into a full behemoth, unleashing his ultimate power to save Aria. Watch this next video on screen and subscribe to not miss next part.